Good morning. Today we want to speak about a very important halakha in regards to not interrupting from once you begin Baruch Shemar until you finish Shemona Esrei. Says the Shulchan Aruch, tzarich lizaher milavsik b'dibur. A person has to be careful from interrupting with speech. Mishiyatchil Baruch Shemar ad sof Shemona Esrei. Once you begin Baruch Shemar all the way until the end of the Shemona Esrei, we'll see B'laneder in the following class, even until Tachanun, until Kaddish Kabal, one is not allowed to interrupt. One has to be careful from interrupting in idle chatter. Says the Rama, Vafilu l'tzorach mitzvah en ledaber ben Baruch Shemar li'ishtabach. Even if there's a mitzvah, if there's a need for, you want to say something, for example, Rabotai, sometimes you have chazanim that they shift, right? Before Kila Munah HaMelucha, they go down, the chazan goes down, and another chazan goes up. So everybody in the shul starts saying, Hazaka Baruch, right, Rabotai? Or you want to collect money during that time, Rabotai, or something has to be said. Says the Rama, even if it's l'torach mitzvah, between Baruch Shemar all the way up until Yishtabach, you should not interrupt. Wait until after Yishtabach, but between Baruch Shemar and Yishtabach, one is not allowed to interrupt. Also, Rabotai, we have to be very careful. I understand sometimes we want to make sure that it is the right thing to do, that we want to warn people not to have their phones on. Yes, some people come, they leave their alarms on, or, whatever the situation might be. If we have to tell them to make sure that their phones are off, everything has to be said prior to Baruch Shemar. Once we begin Baruch Shemar, Rabotai, you're not even allowed to say that. Now, Rabotai, the Mishnah Berurah says, what is the reason for that? Why can't one speak? So he explains, he says, the Baruch Shemar havi bracha shel avnei pesukei de zimra, v'yishtabach havi bracha shel acharecha. Baruch Shemar is like a bracha before pesukei de zimra, Yishtabach is a bracha after pesukei de zimra. Uben yishtabach liyoter halo asur lafsik. And between Yishabach and Yoter Or is also not allowed to interrupt. Yoter v'hala havi berachot kriyishma etc. Rabotai, but from then on, it's really berachot of the kriyishma and so on, and then you have the Shemona Esrei, where for sure one is not allowed to interrupt. So says the Mishnah Berurah, Rabotai, why do you have to be careful? Because once you begin with the opening bracha, which is Baruch Shemar, you got to wait, Rabotai, all the way until the end of the Shemona Esrei, because it's all one big bracha. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Sivkat and Zayin, B'chol makom she'asur la'afsik, afilu b'loshen ha'kodesh asur l'daber. So I would have thought, okay, maybe I can't speak, in any other language, but b'loshen ha'kodesh I'm allowed to speak. Says the Mishnah Berurah, anywhere where you're not allowed to interrupt, like we just said, from Baruch Shemar all the way up until Shemona Esrei, you're not also going to be allowed to interrupt with Lashon HaKodesh. In the Sefer Vein Lamo Michshol, he brings down today, how do you see, Rabotai, from when a person eats, if he has derech eretz or not? So he says over here, Adam she'ochel lelo mazleg. If you have a person that is eating without a fork, a lot of times you have these barbecue chickens, yeah? Chicken wings, thank you. Yeah, everybody, you have to eat it with your hands. How else are you going to eat it? Besides eat it, I don't care. However, he says, what happens now, you have, the food on your fingertips or the sauce. What a lot of people do? Huh? Come on, it's not enough sauce on the plate, not enough sauce on the chicken. He says, Lo yilakek et ezbota b'piv. Do not, Rabotai, do not suck your fingers with your mouth. Mishum she'en ze derech eretz. This is not derech eretz. Ela yiganev otam b'mapit or yishto b'mayim kedei shelo yireh kir'avaton. Rabotai, he says, what do you have to do? Take a napkin or get up and wash your hands with water in order for you not to look like a glutton. A person who does that, it looks like every you gotta get the last, even the sauce. It's a problem, Rabotai. From there you see, this kind of people, they do not have derech eretz. In the Gemara Masechet Derech Eretz, they bring down a story with Rabbi Akiva. he made a su'udah to his students. He made a su'udah for his students. He wanted to test them to see how they eat. Now, Rabotai, sometimes you have bread. Are you allowed to break bread with your hands? Or do you have to particularly cut it with a knife? Or what about you have, I don't know, you have a chicken or something, or meat or other food, you want to break it off with your hands. Are you allowed to do it or not?
That's a different story. Bread is different.
Oh, so we're going to see. Okay, we're going to see right now. So he says, there's a story with Rabbi Kiva that he made a meal for his students. But we're going to see towards the end, he didn't do it because he wanted to feed them. He did it because he wanted to see who has derech eretz or not. Rabotai, you have to understand. I have to be careful when I say this. When you see today a Talmud Chacham that sits and learns Torah, or he's black and white, he might be a Talmud Chacham, Rabotai, but you have to also see if he has derech eretz or not. And this is where a lot of us fall. Rabotai, many people that get married, they get married thinking they look on the outside, the guy has a black kippah, the guy has a black hat. But after he gets married, that's where all the problems start. They start realizing, oh, he doesn't have derech eretz, he doesn't have this, he doesn't have that, that's a problem. That's what it is. How do we bless the child, Ilan? Torah, chuppah, and then we say masim tovim. Why? There's no masim tovim before you get married? It's very hard. Before you get married, you can do all the masim tovim because you're not obligated. But once you get married, the real masim tovim are with your children, with your wife. Let me see you go ahead and try to help your wife and your children now. Let me see you have derech eretz with your wife and your children. That is very hard, Rabotai. Honestly, it is hard. I'm not going to say it until you start. It's Rabotai. It's a work of a lifetime. You have to have a lot of patience. You know, Ilan, when I got married, you hear, who says on the Shabbat Barachot? I got married. I went to Benji's Pizza one day, the first doing Shabbat Barachot. Somebody comes to me up by the line. He tells me, Mazal Tov. Chachai. So I'm going to give you one bracha. If you have this bracha, you're going to have a good life. It's going to be easy for you in your life. You're going to be, Chachai, what's that bracha? He says it's only one word. And write this down, he told me. I say, what is that? He said, Savlanut. That's all he told me, Mr. Isaac. If you have Savlanut, patience, yes, you're going to be able to, pass with fine colors. Yeah, so at that time, when you get married, Yitzchak, I don't know if it's love, it's infatuation. If we don't know what we're doing, why we get married. Yeah, you just get, yeah. I'm like to myself, why in the world would I need savlanut? Why is he blessing me right now with savlanut? Yeah. Rabotai, later you understand why you need the savlanut. Later you start understanding why you need a lot of savlanut. Like you gotta, Rabotai. Ay. Rabotai, I asked one Talmud Chacham. I said, tell me, be honest with me. Ilan knows him. I said, tell me, be honest with me. If it wouldn't be for the Torah, would you still be married with your wife? Would you be able to still control yourself? He said, if it wouldn't be for the Torah, I would knock out my wife flat. He said, the Torah is what allows me not to answer back. I don't cheat because the Torah tells me not to cheat. I don't do this because the Torah tells me not to do it. Not because of her. Because the Torah is what do you call that? That tames me. That controls me. But Rabotai, that's the truth. You could see it today. Why you have abusive husbands, chas v'shalom? They have no Torah, chas v'shalom. It's very dangerous. Anyway, Savlanut. Savlanut, Rabotai. Why? And you know who really have it? Like when you look at our parents, you thought like, well, okay, but you see how much they tolerated in life, not only with the wives, but through everything that they went through. Rabotai, so Rabbi Kiva, what did he do? He wanted to check if they have derech eretz or not. Very, very important. This is why, Rabotai, when you marry off your children, what do? Ilan? You bring them to your house. I know of a story. Haval. I shouldn't maybe say, I don't want people to catch on to it. But I know of a true story, Rabotai. A week before the wedding, they invited the Khatan into the house. Shabbat. After the Shabbat, they canceled the wedding. Yeah. I don't know why. I don't know, Rabotai. It's very important to bring the domot into your house to try to see how he eats. Or to try, to see all the kala also, how does she eat? How does she talk? Does she answer back to her mother? Does she answer back to her father? It's very, very important, Rabotai. If she answers back to her parents, Ilan, she'll eat you alive, Ilan. If she doesn't have her parents, if she doesn't respect her parents, believe me, she ain't gonna respect you also. Emes, Shamata Ron David. Yes, oh man, okay. Ken. מה השם שלה, רונן? איך אומרים? תמר, איך אומרים? אתה זוכר? אוקיי. רבותיי, says Rabbi Akiva, I made a suuda for my student, but I did it for one reason. He said, I brought before them 2 tafshalin, 2 cooked dishes. One was half cooked, one was fully cooked. Listen what he says. The smart one, what did he do? He took, it was a piece of meat or a piece of food, I don't know what he had. He said he took one side, but since it was not fully cooked, then he took the other side, and now he tried to break it. He tried to tear it apart. When he saw that the food is not being cut, you know what he said? He said, I'm not going to eat this. And he only ate the plain bread the whole meal. He didn't touch the food no more again. Hatipish shibehem. But the stupid one from them, he took the food, he started ripping it up with his hand. He sees it's not going, so what did he do? Yitzchak, he put it into his mouth, and now he's, you know, you have that people, they're trying to rip the meat apart with their mouth, yeah? Says to him, Rabbi Akiva said to the student, Lo kach b'ni, this is not you tear food apart. Ela anach akvecha alav betoch hakara. Do it like this. Take your heel, put it into the plate on one side of the meat, v'telosh et hamachal, and then with the other side, pull it apart. He says, v'kavanato haya lelo galaf. He wanted to make fun of him. Achar kach amar lahem, then he said to both of them, Beni, my sons, Lo asitem lachem kol ze ele bishvil levdog etchem, im yesh beyedechem derech eretz im lav. I only did this only to see if you have derech eretz or not. Allah said, Rabotai, we think just because we don't have derech eretz, no, Rabotai, there's a lot more that has to come with it. He says, it comes out from the words of the Gemara, שרק באופן שאוחז את המאכל בידו אחת ונושך אותו בשניו. Here we go, Rabotai. Listen to this very carefully. When are we going to say it's not derech eretz? When you're holding the food with one hand and you're trying to bite off the meat with your teeth. That's considered that you don't have derech eretz. אבל כשחותכו ביד השנייה, but when you are cutting it, when you're trying to rip up the food with your second hand, he says you don't have to be afraid of this, that you don't have derech eretz. Therefore he says, he brings the Shud Mishnah Halachot and he says, if you have a person that takes an orange, how many of us do this, Rabotai? You know, sometimes you want to try to get that first bite, no? You got, with your teeth, you try to rip it apart. He says, that's not derech eretz. That is the way of going. We don't behave like that. That's why, Rabotai, we have to be very careful. You don't bite off from the top and then start peeling it. Now, Rabotai, there's a very big problem with this halakha. From the Gemara we see, if you are ripping with one hand and biting with your teeth on the other hand, that's not derech eretz. However, if you look into the Shulchan Aruch, in Simon Kuf Ayin in Halacha Tet, the Rama over there says you should never hold a food. Doesn't matter bread, doesn't matter any other food. In the jack, you're going to be surprised. Doesn't matter what. The Rama says over there, do not hold the food with one hand. That's halakha in the Shulchan Aruch. Now with your teeth, with your hands, he says you shouldn't hold one food with one hand and the other, and try to break with two hands like we do for bread, for example, or meat, whatever it might be. That's considered botai, not derech eretz. So now we have a machlokit. The Shulchan Rabbi Akiva comes out if you do with your teeth. The Shulchan Aruch paskins even with your hands. So Rabotai halakha l'maseh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? So he says over here, Rabotai, yesh omrim, there are those that say, she'en le'echoz kikar lechem biyad achat v'levto alav biyad hashniya. משום שנראה הדבר כרעבננות. He says, do not hold bread with one hand and rip it up with the second hand because it looks like you are a glutton. According to this opinion, like the Ramah, he wants to bring down over here that a person who breaks the bread with his hands, that's choser derech eretz. You have to use a knife according to this opinion. One second, I know, it's very hard, I know. Baruch Hashem, I don't have this problem because I have sourdough bread, but you can't break sourdough. You gotta use those saws, Elon. You gotta use those rigid knives, or else nothing's cutting. V'yesh omrim, and there are those that say, no, sherak im ochez kikar biyod v'chotech haticha b'shinav. No, that's only when you're holding the bread with one hand, and then you're trying to bite off the second piece with with your teeth. That's when you look like a glutton. But with your hand you're allowed to break. Rabotai, listen to this. When you have bread in your hand, according to the second opinion, like the story with Rabbi Kiva, if I have bread like this and I bite it off, that's not derech eretz. Zelo derech eretz. What do you have to do, Ilan? You have to break it off and pull. How much you need to put in your mouth? What are you doing? How much you need to put in your mouth? Wow, like this. You keep on breaking. It's not derech eretz. He says, the minhag is to be lenient. That if you have to break the bread, you're allowed to break the bread with your two hands. But when it comes to putting it in your mouth, make sure you break off the piece and then put it in your mouth. Not continuously pull away. Thank you. He says, especially on Shabbat, he says, you could go ahead and you could be lenient like this opinion and break the bread with your two hands. Rabotai, you see, we still didn't, Rabotai, there's so much more when it comes to derech eretz. We have to remember, Rabotai, when we're behaving like this, we're always reminding of ourselves of the first halakha that's brought down on the Shulchan Aruch. What is the first halakha, Rabotai, besides getting up like a lion in the morning? The Ramah says, Sheviti Hashem lenegdi tamid. Place Hashem constantly before you. Even when one is eating, where we tend to forget about Hashem, even over there, Rabotai, we have to remember HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen. Amen. Rabbi Chanan ben Ekash Omer HaKadosh Baruch Hu.